of the things I remember most from my childhood was playing Mario Kart. As a child born with a chronic illness, sometimes I had to stay still either because I needed to take my meds or because I was bed, couch, or chair ridden. Mario Kart Double Dash was the first game I remember truly loving, spending hours just roaming around the tracks, unlocking characters, and attempting to beat Mirror Mode. So when the Switch 2 was announced with Mario Kart World as a launch title, how could I say no? I've been a Nintendo fan ever since I was a kid. My brother had an N64 when I was born, we got a GameCube, Game Boy Advance, DS, Wii, heck, I even made my parents buy a Wii U for Christmas. I was still in high school when the Switch 1 was announced, and right before I graduated, it came out. I drove to GameStop on my lunch break to pick it up and neglected my schoolwork to play Breath of the Wild, a game I had been excited for since Skyward Sword came out. 8 years later, things are quite different. I attended, then graduated college, worked a few jobs, changed career paths, moved away from home, got married, and now here we are. The Switch 2 is not a drastically different console when going from the Switch 1. It's not a GameCube to Wii jump, but more like a Nintendo 64 to GameCube. The same basic idea, but a bit more refined in certain aspects. The biggest difference is the hardware underneath. Packing an NVIDIA T239, an 8-core ARM CPU with a max of 1.7 GHz clock speed that sounds like an 80s sci-fi antagonist, Ampere GPU architecture, and nearly 6 times the amount of CUDA cores, the Switch 2 is a massive upgrade compared to the Switch's dated Tegra X1 processor, which honestly felt dated when the Switch came out. The Switch 2 also packs a few hardware-based features, such as DLSS, a form of upsampling, ray tracing, and VRR support. The most visual upgrades are obviously the 7.9-inch screen, now at a full 1080p resolution, with up to 120Hz and HDR10. The HDR implementation has a bit to be desired, honestly, and VRR isn't supported for TVs just yet, though I'm hoping a future dock or Switch 2 update will fix both of these issues. The other noticeable change is, of course, the Joy-Con. Now the Joy-Con 2, these unfortunately still don't have analog triggers, but what they do have is a nifty little sensor allowing you to use the Joy-Con as a mouse. With a bigger screen comes bigger Joy-Con, and honestly these feel a bit more comfortable to hold and less cramped than the original Joy-Con, especially when in handheld mode. Not to mention the mouse feature actually works pretty well, and I was pleasantly surprised by that. In the box you get your Switch 2, two Joy-Con 2 with 2 wrist straps, a Joy-Con controller, the dock, an AC adapter, and an HDMI cable. The dock itself has an Ethernet port and 2 USB-A ports on the side, along with the AC and HDMI port. I didn't quite think that the Switch 2 was much bigger until I pulled the console itself out of the box. Then it becomes more apparent that this thing was indeed a step above its older brother. In reality, it dwarfs the original Switch, and due to this size, the Switch 2 feels a bit more premium. The matte black finish, along with the colorful accents under the thumbsticks and with the Joy-Con rails, really make for an attractive looking device. As for the rails, well, I don't really feel like pulling a jerry-rig everything with my console, but they do feel very sturdy, and I'm not worried about the little plastic bit inside ripping off at all. In theory, you could just pull the Joy-Con out, but the lever itself isn't really in an awkward place to me, so I'll be going with that for the rest of this thing's lifespan. $450 isn't an easy pill to swallow, but seeing Mario Kart World run at 1440p 60fps on my OLED TV is amazing. And in my testing, the battery life has been really good. Though there's now an official fix from Nintendo regarding a battery display issue. Obviously, it's not a DS or Game Boy, but in my time with it so far, it's had a better battery life than the Steam Deck. Speaking of the Steam Deck, there are things I like about it, don't get me wrong. The emulation that thing can pull off is amazing, but it's just so bulky and heavy. If I don't have anything to rest my wrists on, it starts to get unwieldy pretty quickly. And while the Switch 2 is bigger than the Switch 1, it's not much heavier. And with a larger Joy-Con, it does surprisingly well in what I'll call the how long it takes to cut off my blood flow test. Back to pricing though. Obviously $450 is a lot, especially in this day and age. And I can't really say if Mario Kart World is worth $80, since I did get the bundle. But, you know, I've been a physical media type of guy my whole life, and knowing that Nintendo's first-party titles are going to be on cartridge makes me feel a lot better. I wish third parties would follow their lead or CD Projekt Red's lead, since I think the game key cards are really dumb, but in theory I don't own any of my games on Steam, or any digital storefront for that matter, so I'll keep doing what I've been doing and choose to buy physical when I can, rather than supporting downloads. That being said, I do think that $450 is a reasonable price considering the performance this thing packs, and of course the portability that it comes with. I think it should be said that the original Switch was a pretty novel concept. We take that for granted nowadays, but a console you could seamlessly switch to handheld by attaching controllers to it was pretty mind-blowing. At the time, portable PCs were becoming more popular, but nothing really hit mainstream like the Switch 1 did when it released. And having that idea of a portable PC, but this time more powerful at sub $500, including the dock and detachable controllers, is mind-boggling looking back at it. The backwards compatibility I've tested so far has been good, and playing Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom at 60 FPS has been a godsend. Loading times across not only these two games, but any other game I played on my launch day Switch were much improved, and transferring all of my data was easy as well, and took a surprisingly small amount of time, though I'm sure it would have been quicker if I bought an SD card for the Switch 2. And then there's Mario Kart. To sum up what I was saying earlier, Mario Kart has been a part of my life ever since I was able to hold a controller. Whether it was a long car ride playing Mario Kart DS, waiting to take my meds while playing Double Dash, having friends over and playing Mario Kart Wii, or sitting alone in my room playing Mario Kart 8 online for hours on end, it's always been one of my favorite franchises. When I booted up World and started racing away as Luigi again, just like I had for Double Dash, DS, Wii, and 8, I couldn't help but smile. And think about all the times I spent racing against my friends, my family, myself, and complete strangers. There was a familiarity to it, but it was also completely new. The open world isn't necessarily groundbreaking, but it makes the world feel more alive, and it fulfills the childlike sense of wonder I had when I would boot up time trials to look at the surroundings in Double Dash. The mechanics of the game are deep, and I can feel myself getting better and better with each lap, much like Mario Kart 8 made me feel when I would race against speedrunners and Japanese players on the Wii U. At the end of the day, it's a Mario Kart game. Pure, unadulterated fun, chaos, pain, thrill, anxiety, and joy, all within a 3-lap race. It's even amped up to the max with the addition of the tour races, and when playing a Grand Prix, going from one location to the next also ups the ante, since it's quite literally a mad dash to the next racing spot. For me and my personal tastes, I can't get enough of the Switch 2 and Mario Kart World, but I also acknowledge that both of these things are not for everyone, so do your research, watch more videos, and decide on your own where you want your hard-earned money to go. But again, for me and my tastes, I can't get enough of the Switch 2. It feels like a solid upgrade from the Switch 1, and I will see you guys on the racetrack.